right, everybody. Welcome back to TGLP. I'm your host Justin. I'm here with Nate, and we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. How you doing today, Nate?
Yo, can't complain, can't complain. It's a little cold down in Ohio, but
Oh yeah, dude. So much snow today.
dude, I was driving back from church, and what was a 20-minute drive turned to like a 45-minute long drive just because people couldn't drive. And dude, I gotta tell you this, okay? So much stuff happened coincidentally, that it's kind of funny. So first, I get on the highway. None of the roads are clear. There's only one lane that was plowed, so everyone's on one lane for the first 20 minutes I'm on the highway for.
Jeez.
Then when I finally start approaching my exit ramp is closed, so I have to go to a different exit ramp, right? So then I take that exit ramp, and there's a stray dog in the middle of the road that ran right in front of my car. So
No
obviously,
shot.
I stopped, and I swear, dude, he sat right in front of my car. He didn't move. So I'm slowly getting closer to him, hoping he'll notice. This dog did not care. I don't think it enjoyed its life.
It was ready,
So
dude. It was
I
just tired of
honked
the
at
weather.
it. I honked at it, and it finally got out the way though. So it was big dubs, big dubs.
Huge. Well, all right. I think we should get into this podcast. So since it's Valorant week, I figured I should start off with an age-old Valorant debate, and that
Okay.
is Vandal or Phantom.
I know that you picked this too because you know that I'm a Phantom guy.
Look, I have an argument for both. I see both sides. So give
All
your
right,
take. I'll give my take.
um I'm gonna pull up the stats um so I don't spout out anything wrong just because
Well,
I'm
while
not.
he's doing that, I'll say that from where I stand. All right, Vandal's got one main thing going for it, and it's its damage fall off. Because from range, if you hit one headshot with the Vandal, they're done. But with the Phantom, you're gonna have to hit some more bullets. And I don't know if that makes the Vandal worth it because it's one scenario, and that assumes that you hit that first headshot. Whereas with the Phantom, if you hit that first headshot, you're probably gonna hit another shot immediately afterwards. You know what I mean? So at
Right.
close range, the Phantom is now better because it shoots faster and doesn't have the damage fall off. At range, it's still pretty effective. So I feel like I'd have to give the W to the Phantom overall.
Okay. Now I'm gonna say this because I'm a Phantom guy because I'm not the best at hitting headshots, right? But if you're good at hitting headshots and you know what you're doing, the Vandal is technically speaking the best weapon in the game. Um, and here's why I say that it's the best weapon over the op. So with the Vandal, for one, it's a lot cheaper than the op, which is nice because it's more useful that way. You move quicker
True.
with
That's
it.
fair.
If you hit a headshot with it, it's always going to be a single tap. And just stuff like that is what makes the Vandal, statistically speaking, the best weapon to use in the game if you're good at aiming. But if you're like me, where you're more of a not really a competitive player when it comes to Valorant, and you're more of a average player. You like logging on, playing a couple games, getting off.
Yeah,
Then the
more
Phantom's
casual.
your guy because I have up a list here that is all the stats of the Phantom and all of the stats of the Vandal. So I'm gonna list them off real quickly. We're gonna start off with the Phantom first. So they both cost the same, and they're both fully automatic. Okay. Head damage is 156, 140, 124. Okay. So I know a lot of people are like, well, how can it be different? There are
Damage
stuff
fall
that
off.
happens inside of the game that decreases your actual damage output. Um, along with that as well, certain people inside of the game, they have passive abilities and stuff like that can help reduce the damage, and then there's also shields and stuff like that. So
Wait,
that's
there are things
why
that can reduce. Are you sure about that? You sure you're not thinking of Road Company right now?
No, I'll pull up the thing that I'm referring to in a
Because
second.
as far as I know, the only thing that makes the guns do less damage is the range you use them at. A Phantom's effective range before
That's
its
part of
damage
it, but
decreases is
also
shorter than the Vandal's is.
I'm pretty sure that if you're stunned with certain people's stuff, though, your damage doesn't do as much. Your weapon doesn't do as much damage either, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
But
but
anyway,
that's not listed in the chart that you just read off. I
head
think you just read
damage
off the range.
156, 140, 124. Body damage 39, 35, 31. Leg damage 33, 29, 26. So the range for these three is 15 meters, 30 meters, and then 50 meters. The clip size is 30, the fire rate is 11, and then the
Excuse
penetration
me.
is a medium. Now let's get onto the Vandal here. So the Vandal, regardless of the range is 50 meters. Anything after 50 meters, it does lower damage, but that's so unlikely to happen to begin with that they didn't even include it on this list. Vandal stays the same. Head damage
Mhm.
160, body damage 40, leg damage 30. Magazine size 25. Fire rate is 9.75. The penetration is medium. So, with its slow fire rate, its erratic spray, and then since it's difficult to control because of how strong the kickback of the gun is, the Phantom is an all-around better weapon to use for an average player. But if you're an above average player and you play the game consistently, the actual ability to capitalize on that damage and being able to hit your shots makes the Vandal better.
Mhm. I will give
Um,
the Vandal that in a Vandal versus Phantom at range, if they both hit their first bullet headshot, the Vandal killed and the Phantom didn't. So if you're playing in that sort of you're playing angles and you end up in that situation with a guy over and over again and you're using the Phantom, you're just gonna keep losing. But I do think for anybody who isn't hitting every ranged headshot they can, uh, Phantom's definitely a W here. I think we agree on that one.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, oh, so for me, I've always preferred faster fire rate guns in all the games that I play. Um, I've just always liked them that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Like
that's
I've
that's
never been
another
a
topic. Is I think the Phantom allows chain kills more than the Vandal does. If you shoot two bullets with a Vandal, its spray and its fire rate makes it almost unusable. Whereas a Phantom, you can get a kill, flick, get another kill, flick, get another kill. I just don't think the Vandal has, unless you're hitting like headshot, headshot, headshot. The Vandal doesn't have uh the spray that allows you to get chain kills the way that a Phantom does.
I disagree with that. Here's why. So you are right. The Phantom is really good at chaining. But let's not take away from the Vandal here because if you watch anyone who actually knows the game, like if you watch them play the game, and I'm talking about like pros here, all of them do the same thing with the Vandal. It's shoot 3 bullets, wait half a second, shoot another 3, wait half a second, shoot another 3. And usually they can get 2 kills with those first 3. Like usually it's, let's say you have 3 people, right? And you can see them all in like the same point of view. Usually what happens is, at least when I watch gameplay, it's they target the closest one first, switch up, and then in the time where they're switching from one person to the next, the Vandal has its cool off period, shoots the next one, 2, 3 shots dead, and then does it again with the last one that's farthest away.
Well, if you're
So the
if you're
Vandal
taking
can still
three
chain
shots to
kill
get a
pretty
kill,
well.
if you're taking 3 shots to get a kill, by the time the recoil has settled back down on it, you're probably dead. Like the other guy's probably turned around and killed you. Whereas the Phantom doesn't have that gap. The Phantom can shoot a few bullets, and its time to recover is like almost instant compared to the Vandal, from what I've experienced. And that's my downfall. That's a downfall to me.
I have up a website right here from boostinfactory.com. Your crosshair will naturally start jumping up once you stop shooting. It will slowly go back down to the original position. Once it gets back to that position, your recoil has been reset. The longer you shoot, the longer it takes to reset. You will see how fast it resets after only using 3 bullets. It's hard to pay attention to this during actual fights, but you will, with time, learn the muscle memory. Also, for anyone listening in, I have a congested nose, which is why sometimes I sound like Jabba the Hutt. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
grossing
no.
out the
So
audience, my man.
I figured I'd have to tell them now.
Um,
It's gonna be a
well,
long
yeah. So
podcast.
I have an article here that says that the Phantom does like recover faster. The Phantom can shoot 5 to 10 bullets and still have a faster reset time than the Vandal, only shooting 3 bullets.
That is true, but
And that I
again,
just
though,
think
it just
like that
factors
is a
into the
very effective.
actual. It
Yeah.
just factors into the actual skill of the player. Because this
Well,
article I'm
yeah,
reading right
yeah,
here
it does.
says it
But like
resets
a perfect
fast
world is never
after
gonna
3
exist.
bullets. Right. So since it resets fast after 3 bullets, that means if I pull up the stats real quickly, that if you do 40 body damage per, and then 160 had 34 leg with the Vandal, right? Usually when the recoil happens, people kind of let it happen and they just guide it up instead. So with the 3 bullet drop off, you can hit 2 bodies in the chest, and then thanks to that little recoil, it could actually help guide your gun up to their head to begin with. Like if you're aiming at the center of a person's chest and you shoot 3 bullets at them, the recoil from the Vandal can actually help you in
Yeah, but
certain
that's
scenarios.
luck.
I don't think it's necessarily luck. It just depends on where you
Well,
aim the weapon at. You know what I mean? Like when I
the
aim,
range of the range of the spray oftentimes ends up making you shoot not on their body. Like your first 2 bullets hit chest, and then your third one hits Timbuktu. You know what I mean? Like it just hits somewhere absolutely random. And yeah, it's
really, I've
possible for
never
it to hit
had that
that.
experience.
That's I've been using the Vandal a lot lately versus the Phantom, and I keep having this problem where Phantom spray keeps me on their body. Vandal spray third bullet is always out of nowhere, and I have to stop shooting. So you either get the kill in the first 2 or you don't. And it can feel really satisfying when you start chaining headshots, but when you're not, like that means that maybe one round you're gonna pop off and get like 3 kills, but most rounds you're gonna get like 1 kill maybe. Whereas I feel like the Phantom, you're consistently pulling out kills.
Um, let's see here.
And that's I know I'm not the best player. Like, the best player using the Vandal is gonna get a lot more consistent kills than me. He's gonna get consistent kills with any gun he uses because he's good
Well,
like
I'm
that.
gonna
But
tell you this, and I'm just gonna throw this out there because you've seen me use this weapon. You know how goated I am with this weapon. I take the
Bulldog,
bulldog over both of them.
yeah, I
I
thought you
love
would
that
bring that
burst,
up.
dude. I love that burst gun, man. I really do. The damage is weak. Um, I will admit it, but it has a really fast fire rate, and when you aim in and actually shoot the burst, it doesn't have as much recoil as the other two do. Um, and honestly, I can chain with that weapon, dude. I could go on with that thing, bro. I love that.
I feel like its downfall though is that it like forces you to get headshots. Like if you chain 3 headshots, you're doing like a ton of damage. But if you don't, you're doing like nothing,
Yeah,
from my
but
experience.
the other thing about it is that despite the fact that it's a burst, it shoots insanely quick.
Yeah.
Even when you're using the burst, like I think its time in between shots is like only half a second. Let me see. How long is the time in between bursts on the Bulldog? Valorant? Let me see. I have up its stats right here. So its damage is 0 to 50 meters. Bullets to kill. For 125 to the head, it would take 2 headshots to kill. 150 to the head, it would take only 2 bullets to kill as well. Um, So if you hit 2 headshots with the Bulldog, even when they're full shields, it still kills them. Its primary fire rate, which is when you're scoped in, standing, it's 0.3. This is first shot spread, by the way. First shot spread, when you're standing, it's 0.3, but when you're crouched, it's 0.26. And then the alternate fire, which is when you're not ADSing, it's 0.1 and 0.08. And then when you use max spread, it goes to 1.5 and 1.12. Movement penalties, it's a pretty light gun. It doesn't affect movement a crazy amount, to be honest. I believe it's one of the lightest guns in the game. And then with the burst, its headshot multiplier is 3.3 times, and then its leg shot multiplier is 0.85 times. Reload speed 2.5 seconds, magazine of 24. All in all, in my opinion, it's a really balanced weapon. You know what I mean? Like, if I have to pick a gun, I'll take this over the Spectre, but I wouldn't take it over the Phantom. You know what
Is
I
it
mean?
same cost as Spectre?
No, Bulldog is 2,050.
Okay.
But I mean, like when comparing it to Spectre
I feel
stats,
like
it
it's
does
hard.
do more damage, and it has almost the same fire rate.
It's hard for me to use the Bulldog because generally, if you aren't buying Phantom or Vandal, you're trying to buy Phantom or Vandal, and I feel like if you're buying Bulldog, it's not realistic anymore. Unless you get like an ace, you're not making enough money. So
Not
you're pretty much
really.
locking yourself to the Bulldog. Yeah, I mean you can run Spectre, which is a whole 450 less. And if you have a bad round, you still may not even afford a Spectre the next round. Like money eco in that game is not friendly when you aren't popping off. So if you're I feel like it's a very big risk for not a huge payoff. Because you might just be screwing yourself on eco.
I get what you mean, but I feel like you're thinking that it's more of a risk than it actually is. Um, and here's why. When you're actually using the weapon, it's pretty straightforward weapon. I mean, it literally. I was showing Kyler its recoil on it, dude. When you hit fire with it, it has practically no recoil. Like literally, I emptied like almost the full mag before it started like actually like recoiling bad on me. So its hip fire is really good, and in most cases you are hip firing. Like there's
Right.
certain maps like Icebox or even Haven towards the middle, or if you're in Heaven where you're trying to aim in to get those precise shots, but most of the time you're hip firing. Um, so the hip fire on it is excellent. And another thing you're forgetting too is that in the later rounds, if you have a Bulldog and you're trying to get a Vandal or a Phantom, you can pick one up off the ground if you kill somebody that has one. Um, and then it's a
Yeah, but
big
that's, I mean, it's
payoff
a risk
because
because
it's a risk, but the
you don't
payoff
know
is
if you're gonna get in that
huge.
position.
Oh, I never struggled much with getting a kill with it and then picking up a weapon afterwards. But that's just like you've seen the way I play Valorant. I'm a very passive aggressive kind of way. I'm like I hold down a zone, and if people enter that zone, I'm gonna press them hard until they either leave
Right.
the zone or until I kill them. But apart from that, like I just hold down my area. Unless I'm playing Sky. If I'm playing Sky, then I try to get in there. But
That's a big thing. Is I think different characters want different guns. Like I think it would be hard for anybody who's a Vandal, you know, Vandal groupie to be like Viper should use Vandal over Phantom because
dude, when I
Viper
played
is just
Viper,
a Phantom character.
to be honest, I didn't use either.
What'd you
When
use?
I was playing Viper, I was either using the Spectre Bulldog, or depending on the map, I'd actually pick up the Guardian because what I did a lot, I would play as Viper, then we'd have a Sova, and then the Sova would shoot his dart through my smoke, And then if we're like scanning and like we see someone there and I have a guardian, I'll drop my smoke, already know the area that they're in, and try to pick them off.
Hmm.
Like
I
there's
think
certain plays you can do with Viper that if you do them right and you combo them with the right people, Viper can be really busted.
the
It just
thing is
depends on the gun
she
too.
she aids herself to like spray heavy weapons like Guardian, Spectre, Phantom, Odin, because with how much smoke she uses between her wall, between her actual smoke and her ultimate,
Right.
you can get a lot of picks just by guessing where people are, you know. And so if you have a Vandal, what are the odds you're gonna hit a headshot in your first bullet through a smoke? But with an Odin, and you're just spraying everywhere, you might not get a kill per se, but you're gonna deal some damage. And even with a dart, you know where they are, but still shooting someone through a smoke can be complicated. Whereas an Odin, you spray in there, and a Phantom, you know, definitely helps with that a lot. Whereas like compared to a Vandal, I even think the Bulldog is a little bit on the edge for me. I wouldn't run a Bulldog as Viper,
I
but
did it all the time. But then again,
in
I'm
every in
partial.
every they play like in random situations, your gun's gonna be your gun. But I think when you're looking specifically at where Viper shines, the Bulldog isn't one of her top guns. Put her in the situation where she shines, and you're gonna want a Phantom, and you're gonna want a Spectre, or a Guardian over top of a Bulldog, in my opinion.
So I do agree with you on that. For me, it really just depends on who I'm playing with when I'm playing Viper. Because obviously, most of the time when I'm playing Viper, I was running Spectre or I was running Phantom. But like if I'm on Icebox, I'll take the Guardian. And it's like if I'm on Haven, I'll take the Bulldog. And the reason why I take the Bulldog on Haven over something like a Phantom or something like a Spectre, or I mean, uh, Guardian, it's because Haven is a really close quartered map. So usually, since Viper's more of like a like I pick one area and I hold that area really well, if they're not coming to my part of the map, usually I'm not much help to the rest of the team. So I just didn't have the money to always buy the Phantom. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
especially on 3-point maps, like if it's A, B, and C, Viper's hard to use on those maps because she, technically speaking, she takes one of those points and fully controls it, right?
right.
So she essentially has a whole part of the map in her complete control and she can do it by herself.
Hmm.
But then when you have a 3-point map, it takes that away because now they still have, oh, well, if Viper's on A, we still have C and B to go to.
Yeah,
You
she
know what
does
I
have
mean?
the downfall of she's going where she's going. Like she doesn't really have the choice to fake you because by putting her stuff down, she's committing to it in a
Yeah,
way that like
exactly.
Killjoy is similar. But Killjoy, I feel like one
Killjoy
can
can recall her
rotate, and
bot.
two, yeah, she can rotate, but she also I think can hold a point by herself easily, like easier because to be fair, like a Viper smoke and wall looks dangerous, but if they just push through it, Viper's dead before your team rotates. Whereas
That
Killjoy can
depends
kind of
actually, because
Killjoy has
Viper
her
has.
bots to zone people out, like her grenades and alarm bot and stuff like that, where she can zone them out and leave and gather her team before she comes back. So I think
So
Viper falls off in that sense.
I'm gonna disagree, and here's why. I do. Well, let me rephrase. I agree with what you're saying to an extent.
Okay.
Undoubtedly, on a 3-point map, what you just said happens very often. Like I remember when I am on Haven, or when I do play on Haven as Viper, I remember I would always lock up A, and I could hold A by myself. But then it's like one time we had a push where 4 people with their knives out just ran right through the smoke,
Right.
and you can only kill so many before dying. So that's the
Right.
part I agree with you on. Um, but on only a 2 objective map, that doesn't happen as often because usually for 2 objective maps, it's a 2-3 split. It's Viper and one
Right.
other person just because of how nutty her abilities are, and then 3 other people on the other one. So Viper has that extra support in most cases.
Yeah, what I'm trying to
So on
say is
Haven, what you
I
said
don't think
makes
she's a
sense.
strong solo defender. Like you said she was a strong solo defender. I disagree. I think she needs support because she
No,
in her kit is the fear of the unknown. Like all she has against an enemy team trying to push in is that they don't know if they're going to die if they push in. But if she's by herself and they keep putting her by herself, she's just going to keep getting pushed and she's going to keep dying. Whereas other characters, like I mentioned, Killjoy, I think Killjoy is a good character by herself because she has a lot of options in her kit where no matter what the enemy chooses to do, if the enemy plays slow, that's good for both of them. But if the enemy plays fast, Killjoy can still hold her own, whereas Viper is just going to get punished really hard. And once
when
she
an
dies,
enemy
her smokes are
plays
gone, and then you're done.
when an enemy plays fast with Viper, you're forgetting that she still has that gas ball gadget. I forgot what it's called that she could use. For me, I would always set the ball up in the area that the team was most likely to push in from. So, like for
Yeah,
example,
no, that's
like
like
Haven is
where
my
I'm going.
personal favorite map to play on. I love playing on Haven. Even as Viper, I love playing Haven. So when I'd lock down A, I knew the chances of them running through my wall when they go right out of their spawn and then they take that long walkway to go up the stairs. I knew that they wouldn't push through there. I knew that they would push through the tunnel underneath. So what I would do is I would set up my gas mine right on the outside part of that tunnel in between the boxes on each wall. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I'd place it right there, and then I had my wall covering up everything else basically. So if I saw that they were going to go through that tunnel, I'd insta drop my wall, set off that gas bomb, and now they're trapped in there unless they're gonna run through it. But unlike with the wall where you heal your health back, that gas bomb, it takes your health away. You do not get it back. Another thing too is since she's a really good controller and she can buy time usually, like 99% of the time she's gonna buy time.
mm.
She can
No, I'm
call
pretty
out,
sure Ball
they're
is
all on
Ball
me.
not Decay?
What's up?
I thought Ball was Decay. Is Ball not Decay?
I don't believe so. I mean, I'll double check it.
I'll look that up really quick. You
I could
continue.
be wrong. Yeah, I'm going there right now. Is Viper's ball DK? Orb lasts up to 15 seconds. Um, is
Yeah,
Viper's
it does
orb?
cause decay damage. No, so that they heal it back.
They heal off the orb, really?
Yeah, that's almost other than her I think it's called like Viper's Bite, where it's like a toxic pool on the ground. Every damage that she does passively with her smoke, because her ult does it, her wall does it, and her ball does it, all just decay. So it just ends up coming back, which I think is a good thing. Like most smokes, like different smokes have different gimmicks. Astra has sound canceling. Brim has where it's like super smoky on the inside of it, things like that. Like Jet can control hers a lot better than most characters can. Viper's being able to do damage is very unique, and on I think hearing that it sounds super OP, but it's only good if you can capitalize on it. I think that's a important thing about balancing something is you can make something as strong as a smoke dealing damage as long as there's a way around it, which is if the Viper or the enemy team in general isn't watching it, you just heal your health back. But if they are watching it, it's detrimental to you. So like you have to, as the person going in the smoke, you have to be able to play around that. But as the person using the smoke, you also need to play around it, so you don't waste your opportunity
Okay.
when the enemy gives
So
it to you.
I have her toxin up for her orb. Um, hold on, let me pull up the whole shebang on it. Okay. Toxin. If an enemy agent comes into contact with Viper's Pit, so this is her ult, they will instantly decay 30 HP upon contact and continue to decay 1 HP every 0.1 second, so 10 HP a second. If no longer in contact with the enemy cloud, the debuff will remain for 1.5 seconds before their health begins to climb back up, and then their health climbs back up at a rate of 25 HP per second. But the thing about Viper's Pit, which is her ult, that makes it so viable is that it covers up a really large radius of the map. Viper doesn't deal damage inside of her pit because it's her own. And it vision blocks all the other agents. So what
Yeah,
makes it
her
so
ultimate is
viable,
amazing.
like her ult can literally win games. Like if you have the spike
It can
planted and it's just
1v5.
the Viper left, you can pop ult in 1v5 because they have to come into the spike in order to get it, in order to still win the round.
Yeah, and it
And
almost
they're gonna be
guarantees
losing
everybody to one
so
shot.
much damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like they could decay down to 1 HP, right? And they would decay down to 1 HP in about 10 seconds. Or no, not even. They decay down to 1 HP in about 6 seconds inside of her pit. And then even if they have full shields, that's only 51 HP. With the Phantom, that's a 2-shot body kill at close range. So her pit is a very viable ult, and it makes her very useful on double objective maps. But I do get what you mean though about the health regen coming back from her wall and from her poison cloud. But with her poison cloud, it does regenerate slower than the other two do. Like there's a
Hmm.
longer debuff time where they can't regenerate health, and then the health comes back around the same rate as the rest of them do. Um, And since it can last for 15 seconds too, that goes to what I said before, where like it buys a lot of time. And even if they were to push through, it does 15 damage upon contact. So that's a really good damage to start. And then like you said before, like if she has an Odin or a Phantom, she doesn't even have to aim for the head. Like she can just spray and she'll take down, my guess would be if there's three, she'd probably take out two of them and deal some damage to the third in that time frame. Because you know where they're gonna run through from. They just took damage from your poison cloud, and you have a really good gun that you can spray with. So I still think that she's a very viable option.
And she's definitely a strong character. Um, we have plenty more to talk about. So we've been on Valorant for a while. So
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna move into what I think is a pretty crazy piece of news. So I want to start off by asking you about Overwatch League. Have you ever watched Overwatch League?
I did during Overwatch 1, yeah.
What are your thoughts overall on Overwatch League?
In terms of like watching it or in terms of
Well, like, how do you think of it as a whole? Like me personally, I really enjoy it. I enjoy how competitive it is, how they actually like have full franchises like Dallas Fuel. They did the skins, and you got the skins by watching the streams, and um but although I loved it, I almost never watched it because it's so the matches are so long, and there's so many parts of it that are just not, I don't want to say like boring, but like boring by nature because Overwatch is a lot of standing around. Like you
yeah,
get a team
Overwatch is
wipe
a
and then you
very you
stand
have to have
around for
patience.
30 seconds.
Here's what I'll say
And
about Overwatch League. In my opinion, if you want to see some actual like insane plays, like I can't believe they just did that, that's where you go.
yeah,
For me,
there are some
I've
crazy
I've
plays that come out of Overwatch
I've
League.
never been the best at Overwatch, to be honest. I've never been that good at it. You know this, so I guess I'll inform like everyone else who's watching this. I have always been a lot better when it came to games that you solo queued in. When it comes to team-based games, they're not my forte. I do enjoy playing them, but I can't play them competitively because I'm not as good working in a team. But like if you give me a game like Dead by Daylight, where on console I put in like 680 hours on it, on my PC I'm about to be at 100. Um, you put me in a game like Dead by Daylight, a game like Brawlhalla, Smash Bros, games like those, like games where it's just you, I do a lot better. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I always enjoyed watching Overwatch League because I was always able to watch the plays that I knew I could never do, and I was able to find it entertaining because I knew I couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like I knew I couldn't do it, so watching someone else do it was kind of like I don't want to say like surreal experience as much as it was just like humbling in a way, because it's
Hmm.
like I knew I could never do that. You know what I mean? So that's what made it so enjoyable to watch.
Right.
The thought of like I knew I couldn't play that good, even if I was to grind my butt off every single day for a year. So I might as well watch other people do it and like pick a team to root for. That's what made me really enjoy League.
I had sort of a similar experience because with how much Overwatch I played and how much of a team oriented person I am, I generally had the right ideas, but my aim was always too bad. Like, I know where to be, I know what to do, and then I miss my shots and it doesn't matter anymore. And what I found was really
Mm.
cool about Overwatch League is when I watched it, I'd already played every character like thoroughly. So I knew what everybody did. And I could see like what team comps they were going to. I could see what strategies they were running just based on like team comp and the way they positioned themselves. I knew what they were going for and what the counters were and what, you know, what ideal situation they're looking for is. And oftentimes I would see like if I was him, this is what I think he should do. And then he would do it, but like he is cracked. So sometimes he'd even pull out something that I wouldn't have even tried to do because I know I can't pull it off. And he would pull it off, and it's just like so crazy to watch because it's I really love the game, but like I said, it's I could never really I didn't have the mechanics down enough to be able to pull off those crazy plays I came up with, whereas these people were
Right.
doing it right in front of my eyes. Um, but the reason I brought that up is a bit of a segue into Microsoft, so like Xbox, all that stuff,
Right.
are trying to buy Activision Blizzard King. So
Really?
Activision is COD mainly. King is like Candy Crush. So King is their company that is in mobile games.
Right.
And then Blizzard does it all. They have Overwatch, they have World of Warcraft, they have StarCraft, they have Diablo, and
They had
those
Diablo.
games.
I actually didn't know
Yes,
that.
Blizzard has the and so Diablo the reason I brought it up is there's now Diablo mobile. So like this is a company or this group of companies, three companies, have huge stake in PC, both consoles, and um in mobile. When I say both consoles, I mean that Sony and Microsoft with Xbox and PlayStation are the two biggest competitors by far. Nintendo has the
100%.
Switch. They're in the game, but they're not in the same game. They
No.
they do their own thing.
The
Um,
problem with Nintendo is that they're not putting out enough. You know what I mean? Like, let's say like Nintendo was to release like a whole brand new game franchise. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like you have Mario, Donkey Kong, Kirby, all of them, right? But let's like they're coming up with like a whole brand new character, completely brand new video game,
they'd have
completely
to come
brand
out
new
with a shooter
story.
if they wanted to compete.
What's up?
I think they'd have to come out with a shooter game if they wanted to get into the competition with Sony and
I don't even
Microsoft.
like. I think that if they would release like a whole new, like I want to say like franchise, but obviously like you're not aware that you're creating a franchise when you first make it. So let's say they were just released like a whole brand new story mode game with a really lovable character that everyone enjoyed playing a lot, and everyone's like, "This is it! Like this is like their next game." I would put them back in the running, regardless if they were
Well,
a shooter game, story mode based game, whatever it may be,
no,
because
yeah,
they have
no.
had story mode based shooter games.
I'm not saying that size-wise is the problem. I'm saying that what they do is the problem. Microsoft and Sony are
Oh,
trying to do the
okay.
same thing,
I thought you were saying that like
whereas Nintendo's doing its
actual
own
profit
thing.
base.
No, no,
Like
no,
they
no.
don't have.
Nintendo's successful, but like Nintendo does its own thing completely. It has Pokemon, Mario. It has it just its console isn't as powerful. It doesn't really, and it's got like Xenoblade. Like it does its own thing compared to Microsoft and Sony, which have very similar games, if not the same games, a lot of the times. Um, and this purchase from Microsoft, $68.7 billion. Um,
Whoa,
Part of what's moving this,
whoa,
yeah,
dude! Can you imagine that? Imagine having that much money, dude.
yeah, it's an insane number. It's they're getting it they're buying it share wise. I'm trying to find the amount per share, but I'm not seeing it off the top. It's not super important, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But it's a $69 billion deal, and um part of what I forgot to mention with Overwatch League is there was a lot of speculation that Overwatch League wouldn't even continue uh, because of all the delays and all the secrecy after the whole um, lawsuit with the sexual harassment. Which, um, if anybody who's listening doesn't know, Blizzard, the company, uh, Blizzard was found to have a bunch of employees, male employees, that were sexually harassing the female employees, and a lot of they're now doing this like huge. It's a huge lawsuit. A bunch of people have been fired, and that's a lot to come back from. And so this is a good opportunity, uh, and for to me in two ways. One, so that the people who are in it that are currently drowning can get out, but also because I think having a new face on the company could save the publicity where it's like, okay, we hate Blizzard because they sexually harass their employees. Well, now Microsoft buys Blizzard and says, yeah, we don't do that, and now people can say, okay, Blizzard's okay again. I can play Blizzard games again because now I know that the people running it aren't the type of people who would let that happen, you know? So it could be a very good thing in that sense.
Moreover, too, though, I just want to comment on that real
Yeah,
quickly.
go ahead, give you your side.
You know, everyone who's an Overwatch fan, or everyone who has played Blizzard games in the past, who have since come out saying like, I'm not going to associate with their products no more. It isn't because I dislike the games. It's
Right.
because they don't want to give money and they don't want to give publicity to a company that allowed something like that to happen, and then it went unknown for a while, right?
Exactly.
Because this lawsuit wasn't, oh, this started happening about a couple months ago. No, the people who came
No.
out, they were like, I started here. The first couple weeks, first couple months were great, and then after that, they just, when they started getting more comfortable around us, they started doing this to us more, and it just evolved into what it turned into now. For
Hmm.
example, I have stopped playing certain games because I would hear like, oh, like production people did this and it screwed over this person. You know what I mean? Like I've done that before, and it's not because I
Yeah.
dislike playing the game at all, because I love the game. So I think that by Microsoft buying them, not only would it bring back publicity to the company as a whole, I think that it would boost the popularity of the games. Like for example, like Overwatch 2 servers, they have gotten a lot better, but like the estimated amount of people that were going to be on Overwatch 2 versus how many actually showed up, it wasn't even comparable. Like the actual amount of people that actually play Overwatch 2 consistently, the number they were expecting it to be way, way higher. Um, but because of the controversy, a lot of people were like, I'm not going to play this game. I'm not going to associate with this game because of the events that happened. So if this deal goes through, Overwatch 2 servers are about to be blasted, dude. Think about it. The actual popularity of the game is going to increase. The actual like elo system and stuff like that. Honestly, the servers might break. if that happens with all the new people that would come in and start playing it again. Because I know 3 people that I work with. I'll
Well,
leave their names out of this just because I don't know if they want us to be out in public. But I know 3 people who said, I want to play Overwatch 2, but I'm not going to because of the stuff that happened when it was in production. I think they
mhm.
would come back and actually play it if Microsoft was to purchase it. 100%.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a thing to look at. But that's the surface here because there's something dark underneath the surface. And I want to say one thing really quick. Although all the controversy and everything, Overwatch 2's launch was actually extremely successful. It had 10 million players more than Overwatch 1's launch playing it. So it wasn't a dud on its launch.
No, not at all.
Um,
The game is a running functional game and it did really well. What I meant was, at least on the article I saw on it, when it
I just wanted to make
when
sure we weren't like
like
spreading
before it
misinformation.
released. Before it was released, I saw an article on it saying that they were expecting. You said 10 million. Let me see if I can find the
No,
article
they
where they
had
said it.
25 in the first 10 days. They had 25 million players. Overwatch 1 in the first 10 days had
Yeah,
15 million players.
they were expecting 40.
I see.
So they were expecting a higher amount before the controversy released because, in all honesty, well, for one, you had to factor in the fact that it was free to play. So people were
Yeah,
already
that is
like,
also a
now
huge
that it's
thing.
free to play, so many more people were going to get it to begin with because it's free. If they don't like it, they can just uninstall it. So the fact that it's free to play was going to bring a lot of publicity. But then you also have the fact that they were including new games, or not new games, sorry, but like a story mode base, which people, Overwatch fans, were raving for. People wanted
Yeah,
a
the
new,
fact that it's not there
they
is so
wanted story
stupid.
mode, and it was rumored that there would be one. But then you also have to include the fact that Overwatch 1 servers shut down and all this other stuff. They were expecting it to be way more of a success than it actually was. Not saying that it
Yeah,
wasn't a success, but they thought that everything that they were doing would have boosted the popularity so high that you might have not even been able to play it right away because they didn't know if their servers could hold. Um, and because of the controversy, I think that it set back a lot of people from actually wanting to play it.
yeah, and I mean, there's probably even like more reasons other than that, but that's definitely a big one. And I think like if you really look at it, yeah, it being a free game, and I think a huge thing is the fact that Overwatch 1 had already established itself as a game. So Overwatch 1 coming in is a $60 game that is brand new. Overwatch 2 is a free game based on advertising itself as the better free version of the old $60 game that everybody really loved. So it's like you'd expect it to be better than the first launch. So to only be better by um that's like 10, not 10%. I don't know what 10 million.
It was
Oh, it
10
would be more.
million.
It would be like 40%.
Yeah,
By
like 40%.
40%, I'd expect it to be more like 70%. But I'm not in the industry, so that's just me pulling a fucking number.
Not to mention either,
But
though, it wasn't like this was released only on PC. Because when Overwatch 1 released initially, wasn't it only a PC game? If
uh,
I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it released on console right away.
I don't know if it did right away. I couldn't tell you that.
But Overwatch
Um,
2 released. When we're talking about 25 million here, we're talking about PC and console sales for PlayStation, laptops, gaming consoles, like PCs and all that. But then we also have like Xbox. I don't know if it's on Switch. I don't think it is.
it
Let me
was
see.
it was released on all of them at the same time, except for
Yeah.
Switch. It released on Switch later, 3 years later.
No, I'm talking
Uh,
about Overwatch 2.
oh no, what I'm saying, you said you
Overwatch
thought
2
Overwatch
released
1
on.
was only on PC. Overwatch 1 was released on PC, PS4, and
Yeah.
Xbox One. Overwatch
So
2 was
for
also released on all of them.
Overwatch 2 was released on all of them in the same time day, like on the same day.
Yeah,
So
no,
for it
that's what
to
I'm
only
saying. Is
be
they were
that
all
much more,
Overwatch 1 was as well.
like what you said before, I think they were expecting about 70% more. I think that they were expecting the initial drop to be between 40 million and 50 million. Um, but it only being 25 million, it only being 25 million, it definitely dropped in popularity because of the controversy. 100%.
Um, So yeah, so I think we've I alluded to the big, you know, curveball here, and so I think we've had everybody on the edge of their seats. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is stepping in to stop this deal from happening.
What? Why?
Because think about it, okay? And obviously Sony's stepping in too because it's Sony. But
Oh, wait. Let me guess before you say.
go ahead.
Is it because Microsoft already owns so much, and because they're such a huge company that they're afraid that if they buy out another company, it would cause somewhat of like a monopoly where they're starting to own everything
That is
and they
exactly
can just
it.
chalk up the prices however it may be?
That's exactly it. The Federal Trade Commission is so afraid that Microsoft getting this deal would make Microsoft basically the only gaming company that is really worth anything. Like, obviously, Sony and Nintendo are still going to be there, but like, Microsoft is going to have a corner on so much of the market. And when you hear that the Federal Trade Commission is personally stepping in and stopping it, you know it's a serious deal. And I found that absolutely insane. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this deal shouldn't happen or it should happen? Or are you indifferent?
Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. Microsoft has been fair in prices and stuff like that since their launch. They haven't been the kind of company that would overcharge. But at the same time, too, Microsoft has been under basically the same management their whole run through. I don't believe management with Microsoft has changed much. Let me double check that to make sure. I don't want to be spreading wrong information here. Um, who's the founders of Microsoft?
Yeah,
So
because
Bill Gates and
I haven't
Paul
heard anything
Allen.
about that.
Bill Gates and Paul Allen are the founders of Microsoft, and I know for a fact Bill Gates did not sell Microsoft. Because if he did, his net worth wouldn't be where it's at. So you have you have the guy who founded the company with his hands still in the mix of all of this. So with that being said, I think the deal could happen. Granted, there was stuff signed basically saying, like like you can't upcharge prices, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like there would have to be a
I don't
series
think that's possible.
of contracts and stuff set into motion. But the issue with it though is that Microsoft isn't a public company. Like Microsoft
Yeah,
isn't something available to the public in terms of actually
like,
like making decisions like
can you
that.
not
Microsoft is a private
buy
run.
shares?
You could, but
Well, that's
the people
when you
that own
say
the
a
shares,
public company or private company. That's what the definition of that is whether or not
let
you
me
can
see.
buy shares.
Is Microsoft a public company? So they did go public at $21 per share in March 13th, 1986.
Yeah, that was a long
Um,
time ago. They are
but
up.
what
Wait, they have increased over like 1,000%. I think something like that. Yeah,
So
1,000%.
only 28% of Microsoft is owned by the public.
Well,
And like the
that's
people,
not like the people still they aren't going to the meet. People who own shares aren't going to the meetings, but
yeah, but like the general,
um,
it says right here that the general public, who are usually individual investors, hold a 28% stake in Microsoft.
the
So the
issue
public,
is that if Microsoft pisses off the public is going to sell their stock, and then Microsoft is going to plummet. A private company does what it wants because it doesn't matter, but a public company needs people to buy its stock, or else it fails. And so that is a good point that the fact that it's public means that if they do try to go the scummy route with this deal, they're gonna face backlash for it. They're not just gonna walk away charging $100 for every COD from now on, and only putting out an Xbox and PC through their system, and people are just gonna say, "Yeah, that's good with me." Like people are gonna fight back.
um, well, let's look at something real quick. The
Also,
last, the last monopoly like actual like monopoly that happened in the U.S. was in 1890, and obviously it was over oil. And then the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890 eventually saw major U.S. monopolies such as Standard Oil and American Tobacco break up. So that act stops monopolies from happening. And it also has the ability to break up a monopoly if it does happen. So let's just say, theoretically speaking, they start doing what they're gonna do, or what they think they're gonna do, which is they make the deal and then they start upcharging everything. This trust act can come into play and still break it up before it gets out of line, like how it did back with like Standard Oil and American Tobacco. So there
Hmm.
are acts in place that prevents this from happening. So all in all, I say that if it makes money, it makes sense. So if they can do it, if they can somehow find a way to work around it, hats off to Microsoft, man. You know
Yeah,
me. I'm here
I'm a
for
little
it.
bit right now. I haven't really heard this side of the Federal Trade Commission or obviously Sony, but I'm leaning towards it's fine because I can't see any like serious backlash happening from them obtaining this company.
Yeah, and like even if it does, like we have the act I just mentioned in place, the Sherman Antitrust Act, but we also have the fact that it's public, which I didn't know. I always thought it was privately owned. The fact that it's public too, like there's stuff that's put into place to where they can't do that. So I say, let them buy. I'm also partial too because obviously I play Overwatch. I don't play Overwatch as much as I used to, but I do enjoy the game, and I think that it's an amazing franchise, and I think that Microsoft can really build off of this. And I think that they can really build the game up. So I would
Hmm.
definitely say that if they can find a way to make it work, make it happen.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you, man. All right. So, a little bit of a pivot here. You are a huge fan of The Last of Us, right? Especially the first one.
Dude, let me tell you. I played through The Last of Us 1 on my PS3 because that's what it released on, was PS3. I probably beat that game 20 to 25 times total. I had platinum. I played online. When The Last of Us 2 released, I played through that a couple of times. I live streamed it on Twitch when I did. The Last of Us is, in terms of story mode games, it is my all-time favorite. I think that it is all around a masterpiece, and I don't think that you'll find much story mode games that are better. The only story mode game franchise that even comes close to The Last of Us for me is God of War. And obviously, I know that like people are going to be out there like God of War is way better. It's been around way longer. I get it. But I like The Last
Yeah.
of Us gameplay more. I like
Me
the
personally,
story
I'm gonna take
more.
God of War's side on this one. The story of God of War is insanely
And
good.
I'm not going to hate on you for that. You know what I mean? It's just the actual gameplay and the actual story. It really hit home for me in The Last of Us
Yeah,
because in terms of actual connection and actual just emotion, like raw emotion for a video game, God of War ultimately it is based off of Greek. What is it? Greek mythology, right?
it
Well,
started
and,
Greek and
and,
now
and
it's
then it goes
Norse.
into Norse. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's based off of untrue events, untrue characters, stuff like that. And The Last of Us, I think the fact that it's like a zombie
no,
type
they're
theme,
both
or like really
untrue
just like an
events.
apoc- apocalyptic theme in general is something that the general public tends to worry about a little bit. Obviously, not one like The
Hmm,
Last of Us, but just like
I
in
see what you're
general,
saying.
like a post-apocalyptic world. I think that it hits home in a way for some people that it typically doesn't for God of War. And I also think that the fact that it's not like gods fighting other gods, and it's like these two
Well,
people in the Last of Us case, it's these two people who knew nothing about each other coming together, turning out to love one another in a father-daughter way and struggling to make it. It's just such an impactful story that people have to respect.
right.
If you don't
Um,
have respect for the story, then you either didn't pay good of enough attention to it or you are cold-hearted.
dang,
And I'll stand by
he
that,
calling
dude.
y'all out right now. All right. So that leads me into a question that I think I'm really curious about, but I think a lot of people would be really curious about hearing someone as knowledgeable and into the game as you were. Uh, what do you want to see the most out of the show? Obviously, like those
Okay.
you guys who are living under a rock, The Last of Us is being turned into a show. I think 2 episodes are out now. And they look good, but the point I'm trying to make is nitpick what needs to be in that show for it to do the game justice. What are you
Okay.
looking to see?
Here's what I'm gonna tell you for starters. We need to see good character development. In the game, they did an absolutely outstanding job with developing the characters and building the relationships that they did. Um, what I expect to see out of the show for starters is when they release the last episode of the show, I expect to see a completely different bond from Joel and Ellie to begin with. Obviously, in the game, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've only watched clips of the show. I haven't had time to sit down and fully watch it yet. So I'm gonna go into this review knowing what I do know and not knowing what I don't. So I'm just gonna tell you what I expect to see from it rather than
Well put, Nate.
critiquing what
That's
has
very
happened
well
so
put.
far. Because I don't know what happened in it yet. So I'm gonna tell you what I expect to see, and then I'll tell you what I'll watch it before your next podcast, before your next hosting of the podcast, which
Nate,
will be next
Nate,
Sunday.
the show's not going to be. I don't think the show's going to be done by then.
No, I
The
mean like
show's
the
not fully
episodes
released.
that has released.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like
I
I'm
thought you
gonna
were saying
watch
you were going
the
to watch to the end of it.
episodes.
I was like, I don't think
No,
that's
no, no, no. I'm gonna
possible.
watch the episodes that have released, and when you host again on Sunday, get back to me with the question. I'll give you some more information. But
Yeah,
here's what I expect to
for
see.
sure, for sure.
I expect to see amazing character development. I want to see the ending of The Last of Us playing out. I don't want to spoil too much of the game, because if anyone's watching this that hasn't played the game, play the game. It's like $10. The first Last of Us, it's like $10. Play the game. It's a phenomenal game. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. And if you don't want to buy it, watch the game. And if you're like, I'm not a big gameplay guy, watch the show too, because even though I haven't seen it, I know for a fact that show will hit some marks. Um, so I just want to say that I expect to see what I mentioned before, the character development. I want to see them build up the relationships, which starts off as something rather aggressive with two people who don't necessarily trust each other and fight a lot. I want to see it build into that father daughtery love relationship where the father will do anything to protect the daughter and the daughter loves the father and treats him with respect. That's the first thing I want to see. Secondly, I want for the TV show, I mean, to be accurate to the game. And here's what I mean by that. When it comes to TV shows and it comes to video games or it comes to comics, genuinely speaking, they censor a lot of stuff that can't be added to television. In The Last of Us, you will meet a group of cannibals who eat people. Um, I do not want for them to not show that. I don't want for them to censor that. A
You think
part
it's
of the
important
game,
for them to show that nasty stuff?
I think that it's important that they include it because a part of the reason
Hmm.
why the characters developed the way that they did in the games was because of the traumatic events that they went through and how they got through it together. And I
Right.
think that if they were to take that out of the show, it would, in a sense, kind of stop the development from growing or going the direction that it needs to. Um, so that's another thing that people need to keep in mind about it.
Yeah, I
Along with
completely
that,
agree.
and this will be the last thing that I expect to see from the show. We have the character development. We have them not censoring the bad stuff. You need to include it. The last part of it, and this in my mind is probably the most important part of it. Um, it's making a statement. And I know like make a statement how like it's not like an impactful show. I don't mean making a statement in terms of like, oh, like this makes me feel empowered or this makes me feel this way. I mean making a statement that a lot of people, at least I spoke to a lot of people who were like, The Last of Us is a video game. Like they're making it to a TV show. Like it wasn't a book. So I don't know how successful it'll be. I want for this to make a statement that video games can create stories that rub you off in an actual personal sense where you can get personally attached to characters from video games and you can, in a sense, feel what they're feeling. And I want for them to make a statement with the show that video games too can create these amazing, beautiful, complex, deep stories with these great characters, and that you don't need it to be a TV show to do that. And I want for the show to showcase that. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that if they did, not only would it leave a very positive remark for people who maybe didn't watch video games or don't play video games, I think that it could leave a remark of, hey, like this video game and just video games in general, maybe they have a deeper meaning than what we see. Maybe it's not just, people logging on and playing games because they're bored. Maybe it's people are logging on to play the game because they want to figure out what happens next, like how
Right.
people do in watching TV. And I think that if they were to hit those three marks, take out the fact that it would make the game, like the actual TV show, line up with the game, I think that it would make all around one of the greatest shows you'll watch. Just because I know how strong The Last of Us video games are, I know how impactful those stories are, and if the TV show can do that right, you're gonna have a very strong and a very impactful show.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think even I'm curious to see because the people who made this show like said themselves, like the director said himself, a show's different because watching a character die in a video game is just pixels on a screen, whereas a show it's got real people. Which me personally, I'm gonna give my little hot take on this. It just sounds really stupid to me. Characters in a show are also fake, so like n- no, as long as you're above the age of 7, when you see a video game character or a show character die, you recognize that no one actually died. So I found it kind of stupid of a thing to say. But maybe by making this show, they may realize like, wow, there was a lot of emotion in this game. Like trying to put it into a show, like there's a lot going on that we didn't have to make it emotional. It was emotional. Um, and I have a question for you on
Yes.
I think something that the video game has. So like I think about clickers. So I don't know a ton about the game, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there like there's a time where they were around clickers and they had to be quiet, and if as the character you died, a clicker would like run up and like snap your neck, right?
Um. So, so in terms of the actual death, if you were to get caught in the video game, clickers didn't snap your neck as much as they bit you. I
Oh,
have
okay.
seen like certain deaths where clickers did like, like they like ran up on you and they like attacked you, but clickers tend to do the biting, and then you have what I call the sprinters. Those are the ones that like come up to you and they like beat the crap out of you, or like they'll like
Okay.
attack you to the
Yeah.
ground and like try to like rip your face off. Those are like the sprinters, which is what I
Yeah.
call them. The clickers are in a sense, they're like the stereotypical zombies because they bite because
Oh,
clickers can't
I thought
see.
the clickers were the ones that make that weird eerie noise.
Clickers are the ones that make that weird noise.
Oh,
So
okay, okay. I get it.
clickers get infected with spores, which they
Yeah,
took
right.
out of the show. Which I'll give my hot take on that in a minute. About how they took out the spores, but
Yeah, I have a question to ask you before you get into that. I'm
yeah.
curious
So
to hear
but
your
so
answer to that.
clickers, they're more of the stereotypical zombie. They bite you because they can't see. So if they can't see, they can't fight you. So what they tended to do in the video game
Hmm.
was, if you made enough noise and one got too close to you and you didn't react to it in time, it would grab you and bite you. Um,
Oh, that's what it was. It would bite your neck,
yeah, it
and it
would
would be
bite you.
like really gory.
Yeah, it would be pretty
And
bad.
I remember I no, because I remember like this is something the video game can do easily. Is it can show you how terrifying getting caught by a clicker is by when you die and you see it, you have this like newfound fear of dude, this is creepy. Like those they don't mess around. What are your thoughts on
Right.
the idea that if the show put in throwaway characters specifically for the sake of demonstrating what would happen if they died. So like let's say you put that same scene where let's say Ellie and Joel are walking and they're sneaking around clickers. But let's say like 10 minutes prior they met some random guy and you just basically throw the guy in, have him have a little bit of dialogue, maybe have him going to the same place you're going, and have him die just for the sake of the show showcasing what happens when a clicker gets you and how violent they are. You know what I
Um,
mean?
Here's what I'll tell you about that. I think that that's a good idea, but here's why they can't do that.
Okay.
Now, obviously, like what I just said before, I don't want for them to hold back when it comes to the story aspect of it. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but I know like the part of the game that really hit me the hardest was the Henry and Sam part of the game. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? It was the brother and it was the two brothers when they were going through the city. I'm not going to spoil too much about it.
It sounds really familiar, but I'd have to brush
Look it
up on
up when we're done filming, and you'll know what it is. But
it. Yeah.
that part in particular hit really hard because it showcased that there was still good left in the world. And a person does die, and you get close with this person, like you relate to him because he's a younger kid, you know, and he cannot necessarily fend for himself yet. You know, not the way that Ellie can, at least. I mean, he's a younger boy, and he gets bit, and he's too afraid to tell anybody, so he passes. Um, so that's what I meant in terms of like showing the brutality of stuff like that. I don't want them to hold back on the actual story part, but the reason why they can't have castaway people, that you kind of just send in to get like brutally killed by the clickers and the runners and the people, is because there's a lot of young audience in this show that's going to be watching the show. I played through The Last of Us when I was in. Let me see what time. Let me see what year it released on the first one. What year did The Last of Us release? Yeah, it came out in 2013, and I played it on release day, or like within like the same month. So it released in 2013. Um, so I would have been really young when I played it. Like I'm talking like not even middle school yet. It would have been like the fourth grade, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And a lot of young audiences still play these games. So if they did stuff like that, it would drag young audience away from the show. And you need young audiences for the show to be successful because parents ultimately won't watch the show if they have kids that can't watch it inside the room. So I get where you're coming from. I do. I would have loved to seen it, but I understand why they can't do that.
Yeah. I definitely I see what you're saying. Um, I know you just kind of got off a little bit of a rant, but I know you want to talk about the spores. So let's pass
Okay.
the topic to the spores. What are your thoughts on the fact that they didn't bring them? Me personally, I think it's an L because I think the idea of the gas mask could lead to a ton of very dramatic and suspenseful scenes with like a gas mask ripping, something like that. Plus some other, there's a lot of other things, but I
Here's what
think
I'm
it
going
could
to
be a
tell
really
you.
cool thing.
Spores, for one thing, clickers. Okay. Let's just jump into the actual lore of them real quickly. They said inside The Last of Us 1 that clickers are the infected that have been around for a really, really long time, and they were trapped inside places with the spores, and they were infected for so long, and they stayed in one place for so long that the spores essentially attached to their skin, creating clickers. Um, so if you take out the spores, well, you don't have clickers. So why would they have clickers without spores? That's the first thing. Secondly, inside of the games, when Joel reveals that Ellie is immune, or if Ellie reveals it, no one believes her. And the way that she proves it is the fact that she can breathe in spores and not be hurt. She cannot be affected by them. Which is another huge thing because if they're making a Last of Us 1 franchise, obviously there'll be a Last of Us 2 one, especially since currently this TV show it hit number 1 with like the second fastest time in HBO history or something like that. It was something along those lines. So obviously there will be a second one. Inside the second one, spores play a lot huger effect than the first game. So to not have them in, you're gonna be missing a lot of key dialogue and like a lot of like key story stuff, or you're gonna have to flip stuff around to make it match what happens in the video games. There's also a zombie called a bloater inside The Last of Us. And a bloater is like, imagine if a clicker sat inside a room full of spores for an additional 10 years. Bloaters are literally like these 400-pound zombies that are head to toe covered in spores, and they literally rip spores off their bodies and throw them at you. And you can't have bloaters without spores either. So I don't know why they would take it out. Plus, it could have created like such like dramatic moments where, like, for example, when you wear gas masks, when you speak through them, sometimes the audio is distorted. And this never happened in the game, but they could have added something like that into the TV show where Joel's trying to say something to Ellie or
Right.
Tess, but they don't understand what he's saying because he needs to have his face mask on. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it could have created such a dramatic effect on the show. And all in all, I mean, just taking it out was just, they missed a huge part of the game and a very important part of the game at that.
Yeah, I think that's it's a lot of good information on the game, um, or sorry, on the show. I thought your points were very interesting. Um, I do have one more big question to ask.
All
All
right.
right, we ended last podcast talking about Dead by Daylight, and we very
Correct.
briefly touched on it. We have 23 minutes left in this podcast, so we got plenty of time to talk about this topic and any other Dead by Daylight topic we come across. And that topic is Nurse the best killer in Dead by Daylight right now? Or is
Well,
it Blight?
all right. So now you put me in a situation. Um, you and I aren't gonna see eye to eye on this, and I'm telling you that right now
What's
because
your answer?
you've always been a nurse guy,
True, true.
and I've always been a Blight guy. And with the nurse being not debuffed or not buffed but debuffed, and Blight staying the same, I think that this can actually be an argument now over which one's better. Before it was unquestionable nurse, but after the patches that had happened to make her less broken, I think that it's map dependent. I genuinely do. If you have an open map with a lot of walls and stuff like that, like for example, Auto Haven shops, I'm gonna take Blight. But if you have a map like Midwich, or if you have a map like the police station, give me Nurse. And that's all I have to say about it. Right now, I think at the moment, at this point in time in the game, it's all map dependent. What about you? What do you think?
I I feel like the nerfs were bad. Like, one big nerf was the fact that her blink attack is now a special attack and not a basic. And that has always been a very big game changer when it comes to characters' kits, because Sloppy Butcher, Starstruck, stuff like that. Sorry, No Way Out, or not No Way Out. I'm sorry, Noed. Uh, Noed plus Nurse was so good because of her ability to just blink on you, get a hit, and knock you down. Now that you can't do that, I think that does really change Nurse. But that's taking into account perks and add-ons. I'm saying no perks, no add-ons. You're just running a Nurse. The Nurse's ability to get a hit and then get another hit, or to get to another part of the map across all maps. Like, obviously, if you talk about a two-story versus a pretty open area, on a two-story, Nurse is gonna win because she can blink to the top instantly. On a
Correct.
fairly open map, Blight's gonna win because he can just dash through
You
it.
can just run,
And
yeah.
um, but I think in most cases, around tiles and things like that, um, that you're gonna see Nurse's ability to just basically take whatever the intention of that tile was and just completely render it useless in a way that the Blight just can't. A Blight needs lines to move. And I feel like the counterplay to him uh, is more plausible than if a nurse is blinking accurately, you just lose. There's not really anything you can do about it. A Blight playing accurately, you can still do something about it in a lot of cases, I think. And because of that, I feel like even though Nurse got nerfed, if you're looking at her base versus Blight base, she's just too oppressive. She's just too good at being everywhere at once and getting back-to-back hits, whereas the Blight needs that recovery time, and has that counterplay, that stall capability. So I still give it hands down to Nurse. Blight's amazing. I still give it hands down to Nurse.
Here's what I'm going to tell you though. All right, obviously, like you said, for one, if we're going to take out add-ons, Nurse isn't as viable as you think because she only has 2 blinks. And obviously you have the one blink that you can fully charge, which takes you really far. But then after that, you only have that last blink, which doesn't even take you half of the first initial blink that you can do. So when you're playing around tiles, let's say they have a pallet, a vault, right? If you have a decent survivor, they're gonna be faking you out a lot. You're gonna think, well, are they gonna vault it? Are they gonna not? Like you're gonna second guess a lot of decisions as that nurse, just because you only have that one additional blink to follow up on. Whereas base Blight still has, I believe, 4, maybe even 5 dashes. And those dashes go on for a decent bit of time. Blight's actual downfall, and the thing that makes him not as viable when you take off perks and add-ons, is the fact that despite the fact that he has really good map control, he's really good at snowballing. Take that out of the picture, the thing that people struggle with most is the turning mechanics.
The closest
What's up,
color
Bri?
to orange is red. Do you want some gum?
No, I'm good, buddy. Thank you
Do you
though.
want to eat later?
No, buddy, I'm good. I'm on a podcast right now.
You want to
Um, no, buddy, I'm good.
Poor Rylan.
So anyways,
Just trying to give you some gum, man.
I know, but I won't keep that. But anyways.
Oh yeah, true.
But anyways, yeah, no, the actual turning mechanic is what makes it so tricky to get around. And I do get what you mean, where it's like a 2 blink nurse can still have that pressure that Blight can never put on. But it really just comes down to what map you're on when you take off the add-ons, because, like how you said before, with Midwich, obviously Nurse is better on Midwich because she can go from top to bottom. But with only 2 blinks, the actual precision that it requires to be able to blink from the bottom floor up to the top floor, and then only have that little side blink and use that little side blink to then blink on top of somebody and then be in enough range to hit them. Also
Well,
assuming
not
they're not near a vault.
necessarily.
Also to assume that they're not near a vault or like another pallet that they could get to, or also assuming they can't drop down. It takes a lot of skill to pull that off. So what would really more likely be the case is she would blink upstairs, look around, see where they're at, let the blink dissolve, then have to
Yeah.
wait for the cooldown to happen, then try again with
Okay,
re-blinking.
but she's doing that faster than Blight's getting up the stairs by a long
Yeah, but I
shot.
think that it's consistency though. Consistently speaking, a Blight can be more consistent with those downs than a nurse can, because a nurse, for one, it takes the skill gap on it is huge. Like to do what you're talking about isn't something that someone can get down after playing nurse for 2 or 3 weeks. Like you have to
Yeah,
study
well,
nurse, you have to study maps, and
Blight's
you
hard to
have
get
to
down.
understand the actual angle to get around at. So the skill gap for what you're referring to, which makes her the best character, is huge, and not that many people can do it consistently. I mean, obviously everyone's gonna have like their game, but
I
not
think.
everyone can do
Well,
what you're referring to consistently. And for the Blight skill gap, I gotta get this thought out because I know I'll forget it.
go ahead.
I picked up Blight in 2 weeks on console without using add-ons, and then I went on my PC, and I swear to you, I fully prestiged him, or not fully prestiged him. I prestige won him, and I didn't even use any of my add-ons until he was already at level 50 because I didn't need them. With Nurse, I tried playing Nurse, and I still get on and try to play Nurse from the time I got the game, which, by the way, I was playing Dead by Daylight back when they released Michael Myers. I bought the game shortly after they released him. I still am not as cracked with Nurse as the people to make the plays that you're referring to are. So I think that it ultimately comes down to consistency when you take out the add-ons, and I think that consistently a Blight is more consistent with no add-ons and no perk than a Nurse is.
I'm trying to get my thought on it together because, for one, I think they're both killers with very high skill ceilings. In the sense that a bad one probably is never gonna get a kill, and a good one is gonna four piece most of the time, and that's something that is not consistent for every killer. I think there's a lot of killers that can, even when you're bad or good, still are consistently, they're not consistently never getting kills or consistently getting four kills. They're like, kind of in between. Like, I think Bubba's a very good example of that. But where Blight has a smaller one, in my opinion, that it's a trade off. In my opinion, I see this very often. It's a trade off where the harder it is to master it, generally means the smaller the overall end goal payoff. I know it's not necessarily always true, but I think in this case it is, because as a Blight, learning the Blight mechanics is going to consistently get you hits more often than just learning Nurse's mechanics is going to consistently get you hits. I think as Nurse, just knowing how she works, there's still a lot of counterplay, whereas Blight, just kind of knowing how he works, you're generally going to be putting yourself in a good position. Like, it's not as complicated. Like, you know when to use his perk and how, or when to use his ability and how to use it, whereas Nurse, it can be very hard to understand when to use it, how to use it, even though you understand it. But
Right.
I'm talking which killer is the best. I'm talking you are the best player. Which one, you're playing like a perfect game, which one is realistically going to have the higher payoff? Nurse is going to be harder to do it with, but I think she will get four kills faster than Blight will get four kills every time. I think she will end up getting four kills with less generators left, or more generators left, sorry, than Blight will consistently, because the fact that she's so much harder to get down means that when you do get her down, there's even less that people can do about it. There's even less counterplay that people can do to stop you.
Well, obviously, going apples
But
to apples.
consistency wise, I'd say Blight's more consistent than Nurse by far, and that
Yeah.
that kind of goes back to the Vandal Phantom argument. I know I picked Phantom because of its consistency over Vandal. So there is an argument to be made that because he's consistent, he's um, he's better. But I think if we're talking perfect scenario, I'm giving it Nurse.
Gotcha. So obviously, going apples to apples, Nurse is definitely going to outshine the Blight. Like, if you were to take the best Nurse player of all time and the best Blight player of all time, I think that it would be a closer match than you expect for it to be. But
No, I think it would
ultimately, I
definitely be
do
close. If they
agree.
each played 10 matches, I think it'd be close.
But ultimately, I do agree that the Nurse would come out on top. So I guess looking at it from that way, disconcluding what I was explaining and just looking at you take the best player for this one and the best player for this one, and we only look at the mechanical aspect of it, then even with the debuff, Nurse would still outshine Blight. So I get what you're saying.
And I know I said like hands down Nurse. I take that back. I'd say it is a very close race.
Yeah, it's a
Like, really
lot
thinking about
closer.
it, it's a really close race. But I mean, if you could give one killer, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but could you give one killer that you think even competes with the two of them? Because I feel like
There's only
I feel
one.
like I'd give maybe you probably know who I'm gonna say. I think
I do.
the Plague is probably the closest competing in my eyes.
I'm gonna say this. Take add-ons away from Plague. She doesn't compete at all.
No,
Plague's add-ons.
Well,
She would
but I
need
think she comes
add-ons.
closest to competing
I
without
would
add-ons.
think that.
Spirit is another one, but Spirit without add-ons
Well,
is
Spirit
really
also
hard to
got
get.
debuffed. I think before
Nerfed.
the debuff,
Weirdo.
Spirit probably would have been second place over Blight, but after they nerfed her, Spirit wouldn't be able to be inside the ranking. And obviously,
Yeah.
like if you take the best Spirit in the world, she doesn't need add-ons. But I would definitely
Well,
say that
there's a lot
I would
of
definitely say that it would
limitations.
go
She
Plague and
can
then Spirit. I think looking at top 5 killers all time. But
hmm
actually no, because there's one more killer that you're forgetting about.
Who's that?
And I'm going to say it. The artist.
Oh, you know, I did forget
The
about the artist. The
artist
artist is
doesn't
very, very
have
impressive.
any the artist doesn't have any actual counterplay to her crows. Because when you shoot the crows, they go
I'd
through
say it's a
everything.
close one between Plague and her. I'm sorry to cut you off. Plague and Artist
You're all good.
is my two runners
Um,
competing. Like that's my secondary debate versus like
I'm gonna
Spirit
tell you.
and no, I'm sorry, Nurse and
I'm gonna tell you.
what?
Artist versus Plague. Artist takes it.
I
You
haven't
can
played
move.
Artist,
You
so
can.
it's
I've
tough to.
played her. I have my artist prestige too. I've played a couple hours of her. And I've also played a couple hours of Plague. I haven't overly played either of them though. But artist is crows. If she's accurate with them, like how Nurse's Blink is, she hits. She hits every time because you can't. You can dead hard through them. But apart from that, if she's on target,
She's
they
got to
go
hit
through
two in a
everything.
row.
Yeah, but that's really not that hard when you think about it. Because if the crows are already on you, for one, if you're injured and the crows hit you, it downs you. You don't have to hit
Is it? I
twice
thought you
with
had to
one.
have. Are you sure about that? I mean, I guess
Yes.
you would know. I don't play. I didn't know.
Um. I mean, I'll double check it just because it's been a minute since I played her, but I'm like 99% sure. Does the artist have to hit twice when injured? Does the artist have to hit twice when injured to
With
down
crows.
somebody in Dead by Daylight?
Oh, it's a range thing.
Yeah,
I think you're mistaking the range. From a certain range, it will insta down.
yeah, that's what I meant.
But
Um,
that's
if
kind of
you're
a that's an ideal. Like you're not going to be hitting those range shots that often compared
yeah,
I think the
if
close
you
range.
put all 3 of her crows down and shoot them from a range, and you're focusing one person, you're more likely to hit than you are to not.
That's fair.
And then to close the
But
distance, she's a 4.6 if I'm not mistaken. But even if she's just a 4.4, she's still moving really, really quick. And then she can M1, she can use the crows. She can put a crow down one way, and you can see where the crows are placed. She can put the crow down one way, and then you can see that she'll shoot crows that way, which completely cuts off one way where she could run. Then you can put a crow down another way to keep her trapped inside this little box. And then if you press her on from the other side, she'll have to pick a side. And as long as you time the shot right, you're gonna down her every single time because you can trap them. You can't do that with Plague. The most that Plague can do that comes close to something like that is the fact that she can infect pallets and infect
Plague is a
window balls.
snowballer. Okay, so I think Plague is really strong because Plague has the ability to spread infection, and the enemy team is put in this situation where everything that they want to do, the Plague can do something against it. So if you, as a Plague, encounter two people, like a gen and another person, you can puke on the gen and then chase one of them. Now that guy can't go back to the gen without infecting himself. Or like let's say another situation is you just straight up infect one person, chase another person. That person eventually is going to become broken. Now broken not only makes you infect things you touch, which means he will infect other survivors, but you're also super loud, like super loud. And you can't heal unless you go to a fountain. Well, now the plague has just put them in that situation without even committing anything to it. They literally like a wraith. These two people chases one of them, the other person gets out free. The plague chases one person, the other person is that bad of a position now. Now, if they heal at a fountain, the plague uses the fountain and gets her puke can now do damage. And if you get in a situation where you have that and there's like two people broken at the time, you just start walking around knocking people left and right in a way that I don't think Artist is doing. Artist Artist has its like it has its poke where it can poke at gens by from far away, and it's really good at loops. But the plague can have so much happening on the field without even having to commit anything to it. Like literally just by infecting people, she's oppressing them in a way that there's no counter to. Because as soon as they heal, they're just giving her another chance to go sicko mode on them. And in my experience, all you got to do is get people infected and then get it down so that they don't have the opportunity to recover, and it becomes this bleed where they are just bleeding and they can't recover. And there's a point where against a good plague, there's nothing you can do anymore. You're just running like a headless chicken because you're loud. She's got your whole team downed, and there's just nothing you can do anymore.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
tell
think
you
artists
this.
can do that.
I'm gonna tell you this. I am on Otz's killer tier list right now. His newest released one. And I'm gonna call you out here. Otz has artists. Otz's top three goes Spirit, Blight, or no, it goes Nurse, Blight, Spirit. The next one after Spirit is Artist, and then the one after that is Plague. Otz says the artist's skill ceiling is high, add-ons average, map dependency average but low as well, and then unhook scenarios are average. Can reliably corner survivors into unavoidable hits. Main counter involves holding forward in big maps. Remarkable ability to harass and stall gens from afar. And then there's potential is elevated by some strong synergistic perks. That's what he says. Plague, skill ceiling high, add-ons average, map dependency average low, unhook scenarios average. Can reliably corner survivors in unavoidable hits. Main counter involves holding forward in big maps. Remarkable ability to harass and stall gens from afar. Potentially is elevated from strong synergistic perks. So when it comes down to it, oh wait, no. What in the world? Never mind. I reread. I
They're
skipped
still
ahead
really
one.
close.
I skipped ahead one. So the plague says skill ceiling high, add-on strong all around, map dependency average, unhook scenario strong. Naturally counters most healing items and perks. Some loops
Yeah,
are
that's
completely unsafe against red puke. Some add-ons are deceivingly hard to counter. Fountain placement is an unfortunate luck element. So the fountain placement,
yeah.
the fact that it's
That is an
very
inconsistency that
dependent on
artists
where
have
it's
to
at can screw you over, but also listen to the difference between why artists is topping. Can reliably corner survivors into unavoidable hits. For Plague, it only says some loops are completely unsafe against Red Puke, but if you're playing against a decent survivor, it's going to take a lot to actually lure them into that. And even then, I feel like it's a lot easier when you're close up on them to hit them with the Red Puke than the artist's crows are. So I do agree with you there. Up close, Plague is more reliable. But
Mhm.
like what we said before with Nurse versus Blight, if we take the best artist and the best Plague in the world, while it's gonna be close, the artist ultimately pull through because her skill gap is just higher.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about this more, but we are fresh out of time, so we're gonna have
I
to
agree.
close this one up. Thanks everybody who listened this far. I hope you enjoyed podcast so far, and we'll see you next Thursday.
All right, and I just want to say one thing. Next Thursday, we will be doing, starting on Thursday and then Sunday, it will be Dead by Daylight League.
Dead by Daylight week.
Next Thursday, I will be hosting podcast, and we're gonna make that whole podcast Dead by Daylight based podcast, and we're gonna listen to some of Justin's takes on the game.
Sounds good. All right,
All
see
right.
you next time, guys.